So here we go. Supporters of the president, right-wingers, conservative talk show hosts, Fox News anchors, now talking about how there's a coup against the president, and we have to take action against the people plotting against the president. It's exactly how fascism starts. We must protect the dear leader, and whatever rules we have to break, we have to show the fortitude in breaking those rules and firing and arresting any of our political opponents. Now, if you think any of that is a hyperbole, hold, let me give you the quotes. Now, Sean Hannity was the first to start this. He did this a while back, talking about how, quote, a soft coup is underway. Just let's pause there for a second. A coup is when some people inside the government use force and violence to physically take the government. No one is suggesting that here. If there is an investigation of Donald Trump that shows that he was connected to the Russians and that he clearly broke some serious laws, they're not going to get the president for traffic violations, okay? Although the Republicans did that with Clinton, but there's no way the Democrats could get anywhere near that. They'd have to find serious violations of significant laws here and et cetera. And then they would then take action or make recommendations through legal channels. There's nobody getting in a tank here, but that's the atmosphere that Fox News wants to create for you. Hannity said at the time, sinister forces quickly aligning in what is becoming now in my mind a clear and present danger. Now you do that kind of talk because you're the one who's willing to use force. So what does the special counsel have? All he has is lawyers. He doesn't have any guns, he doesn't have any tanks. But now the right wing talking about they're clear and present danger. We have to do something about them. You're gonna get more specific here in a second. Mark Levin, another conservative radio host, chimes in and says there's a quote, silent coup going on. He talks about that now. Then Governor Mike Huckabee, he jumps in and he says, earlier today discussing the shocking undermining of our institutions of law and justice by highly placed political operatives and their abuse of power. It's an attempted coup d'etat. What are you like? So one of the things he's referencing is, as I've explained to you, Mueller's team got emails from .gov email accounts that are not private, that are public, that were happened during the transition team. It is perfectly lawful, and every single lawyer knows that. But Huckabee's like, oh, it's a violation, it's terrible. They're following the law, it's a coup. No, following the law is the opposite of a coup. Okay, and then here comes Representative Matt Gaetz, who's one of the most fervent Republican supporters of Donald Trump. He says, we're at risk of a coup d'etat in this country if we allow an unaccountable person with no oversight to undermine the duly elected president of the United States. Well, first of all, he's perfectly accountable. He's accountable to the Deputy Attorney General, who is accountable, by the way, to the president and to the American people. He's unelected. Well, prosecutors are generally unelected. Is that to say that if the president can be a criminal, he can just go and pick your pocket and just mug you in the streets, or do worse, punch you in the face, or do anything, and then say, oh, here comes a prosecutor to try to, he's an unelected official trying to hold Trump accountable for shooting someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue. These are obvious talking points meant to drum up their side into a fervor that might take the form of force. Gaetz continues, the bias is like an infection, it's like an incurable cancer that's inoperable, and we've got to end this Mueller probe. Oh great, now we're talking about viruses and how we've got to root out the virus. Gee, I wonder how these brown shirts are gonna do that. So then we go to Fox News recently. Here's a graphic from Jesse Waters' show. There it is in giant words, a coup in America. Okay, and here is Jesse Waters talking about that on Fox.
So the investigation into Donald Trump's campaign has been crooked from the jump. But the scary part is we may now have proof the investigation was weaponized to destroy his presidency for partisan political purposes and to disenfranchise millions of American voters. Now, if that's true, we have a coup on our hands in America.
Keep using the word coup because they want to be able to use state violence to go arrest their political opponents and anyone investigating them. Well, if that wasn't clear enough, Jeanine Pirro is not that bright, so she's going to make it clear. She was described by the New York Times and as, quote, a presidential favorite. He even had her over at the White House for a whole hour. He says he watches her all the time. So let's see what this lunatic's up to.
It all started when Cardinal Comey destroyed our FBI with political hacks to set events in motion to destroy the Republic because they didn't like the man we chose to be our president. Well, it's time to take them out in cuffs.
Oh, that's great talk, taking out members of the FBI. By the way, Rosenstein is a Republican, not a Democrat. That was another lie, of course, by the right wing. And Mueller is a Republican. He's a registered Republican. He worked for George W. Bush. They're all Republicans. Oh yeah, they're coming to get our president. They didn't like a Republican winning. So let's take him out in handcuffs, arrest all of our political opponents. And in the case of Mueller and the FBI, they're not even political opponents. They're just people doing an investigation of you. It's so obvious that they're guilty. That was Pirro earlier. Here's Pirro doubling down now.
I hereby double down. This is worse than even I imagined. This week we saw documents that gave us context, or as I would say in my DA life, motive for the crimes that I've already described to you in the past. The person responsible for changing the language from incriminating to innocent is Peter Strzok, a button man in the crime family of James Comey. And also Strzok, the one who interviewed Michael Flynn, the only one charged with anything. I doubt in American presidential election history that there has been as great a crime or as large a stain on our democracy than that committed by a criminal cabal in our FBI and the Department of Justice who think they know better than we who our president should be.
Talking about leading people out in handcuffs, doubling down on that. She hereby doubles down. Talking about there's a criminal, the crime family of James Comey, the former head of the FBI. There's a criminal cabal inside the FBI. All the people who disagree with us that have evidence of our wrongdoing need to be rounded up. This is as scary as it gets. This is exactly how fascism comes into a country. The only question isn't whether they're trying to do it, it's whether we're gonna stop them. So now Representative Jim Jordan, it goes on TV all the time, sometimes portrayed as a moderate Republican. No, his shirt might look a different color to you, but I guarantee you that it's brown. Listen to his reaction to that insane rant by Pirro.
We're going to subpoena Andrew McCabe, subpoena Peter Strzok, and first of all, Judge, your opening was perfect. That lays out the entire story. Bruce Orr, Peter Strzok are central to this. So subpoena Andrew McCabe, Bruce Strzok, Bruce Orr, his wife, and Lisa Page, and I also think the chief of staff of the FBI needs to be brought in.
Yeah, bring them all in. Let's do some show trials. And now that's a sitting Republican congressman. Here's another one. Back to Matt Gaetz. Let's hear from him.
We just need the Justice Department to step up and seize control. I don't know where the Attorney General and Rod Rosenstein are in this, but I think they need to fire Mueller and cure us of these conflicts. These are actions that people are taking to undermine the duly elected president and to undermine the democracy in our country. And the elected representatives of the people, the Congress, have an obligation to expose this bias, to expose what I believe is a corrupt investigation. And I call on my Republican colleagues to join me in calling for the firing of Bob Mueller. And look, it's time for Mueller to put up or shut up. If there is evidence of collusion with Russia, let's see it.
If they get their way, they will fire Robert Mueller. They'll fire Rosenstein if they have to. They'll fire everyone to protect the law breaking of the president. If that's the kind of country we have, then it's going to be ruled by these monsters who don't care about the rule of law at all, don't care about our system of government. I would argue they're the ones doing a coup, what I would call a system coup against the system. And in their case, they would use force. When you handcuff someone, when you do political arrests of people, that is using state violence against them. If they start locking up their political opponents or what they view to be their legal opponents, people that would actually bring them to justice, and we don't act, then there's nothing left to protect us. And it's not the America we knew. there's in every country, there's unfortunately, about a quarter of the country that is always ready for authoritarian rule. They're always looking for a strong leader, and they'll always let that strong leader break the law, break the rules, and do whatever he wants. And from time to time, if the rest of the country is weak enough, those 25% will seize control, usually by force or violence. Usually when they didn't even win a majority vote, like perhaps 1930s Germany, and perhaps like 2016 in America. Well, neither one of them got the majority of the vote, but somehow they wind up in power, and then once they're in power, they start taking illegal actions against their opponents, and if you don't stop them, you can't ever stop them later, because the people who would have are already in jail and already taken care of. We gotta act right now. And look, if they don't fire Mueller or Rosenstein and the investigation goes forward, and whatever it comes up with, that's totally fine. And if it comes up with, hey, it turns out Trump didn't do it, or we don't have enough evidence that he did it, well, that's the course of the investigation, because we accept the rules and laws of this country and the system of this country. And it is an incredibly hard standard that they have to get to make sure that they could charge a president of the United States, and it should be that hard. And we understand that. But if they start saying, no, we're not gonna let that system run, instead we're gonna take over and start putting people in jail, if you're not in the streets, then don't complain later that we lost America, because that is exactly what their intent here is. Young Turks. If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.